Welcome back to the Valley to Peak Nutrition Podcast. This is a little bit of a different episode, which I feel like I've been saying a lot lately, but this week I am joined by Chris from Greenbelly Meals. Now, I know that there are quite a few of you who are pretty familiar with a product that he has called the Meal to Goes. And I know a lot of people, backpackers that I know and backcountry hunters that I know, they love these just because of the simplicity to be able to provide so much nutrition in basically one package. But I thought he had a really compelling and interesting story about how he got to where he is now. And the way that he and I initially connected was someone from his team reached out to me to see if I was interested in doing a video that they were doing on electrolytes, which had me dig into a lot of their content. And it was great, which I was really surprised to find from a company that predominantly focuses on backpacking food, yet has a great media presence in and about topics that aren't directly related to their products. And so as I began to dig in more, I found him just to be a really interesting person and thought that we could have a really great conversation. And I think that we did. So this is Chris from Greenbelly Meals and I talking about the origin of Greenbelly Meals, the iterations that go into developing a product like that, all the great content that they've put out, and what he kind of is envisioning in the future, both for his company, but as well as where the future of backpacking food and nutrition will go. Hope you guys enjoy it. Yeah, so I think a good place to start for most people is they've heard of Greenbelly, right? But they may not know you. So a good spot to begin, I think, is just an introduction of kind of who you are and what you do, and then obviously we'll get into the story a little bit. But one thing I'd love to just selfishly hear about is in the About Us section on the Greenbelly website. It says, I quit my job 12 years ago, and it sounds like you embarked on this adventure that most anybody would be envious of. So yeah, I'd love to just hear, introduction of yourself, your background, and some of that story too.
Sure. Start off introduction. My name is Chris Cage. I'm the founder of Greenbelly Meals, based out of Austin, Texas, and we make a really robust 650 calorie ready to eat meal bar that's been described as a Rice Krispie treat on steroids. So, um, yeah, and I started it. I guess I was an account. I graduated in 2010. I was an accountant for 2 years, about, and I just wasn't. I was not in love with accounting. So I ended up quitting accounting and planning this big adventure trip that was going to involve a 6-month hike of the Appalachian Trail, a 3-month bicycle tour of New Zealand, and some other travel in Asia. I ended up teaching English, volunteering in an orphanage, all this kind of stuff. And then when I finished all that travel, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Do I go back to being an accountant or do I do something else? And I was pretty familiar after hiking the Appalachian Trail for 6 months. I was pretty familiar with like the backpacking gear market and um, what products were on the market and where I thought there might be a void. And I thought, let's try to take a stab at starting a business. So that's what I ended up doing. And I lived at home with my parents for that first year and pulled everything I had out of savings and worked on making this high calorie meal bar concept that I didn't think anybody was doing. And that's really what I wanted for myself on, my 6-month hike of the Appalachian Trail. Was I was burning a ton of calories and I wanted more calories in like a more easy format. So like some of us were just eating peanut butter and olive oil and all these things like that. So I was wanting something that would be, instead of a low calorie option, which felt like everything on the market was low calorie, I wanted to make a high calorie option. So that's what I did, and then that was 10 years ago now. So
So
yeah.
I have a couple questions. You hear about this a lot. Like in fact, like most people that I personally know who have done the PCT or the AT or any of these longer commitment through hikes sort of have this, I mean, call it aha moment or whatever, where they just, at least what I have pictured, and I guess this is the question, they hated what their life was and they just wanted something different. Was that it for you with accounting, or was it just you had these ambitions of other things and felt like anything that you were, for lack of a better word, I guess, neglecting on the career path was worth giving up to go pursue these?
That's a good question. Was I running away from bad or gravitating towards something exciting? Right. And it was probably more so the gravitating towards something exciting. Because I think in hindsight, I really didn't hate accounting. I kind of liked working with numbers. I liked who I was working with. It wasn't, I wouldn't say like I loved it or it was like my passion or anything like that, but I certainly was, I, I was, if it would have been hard to keep me at any job at that time in my life because there was just an internal compass that was like, I'm dying to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And if there was any kind of moment that really clicked for me, I don't know if there was. I think it was uh, a few kind of mini clicks. I know when I was younger, I was a Boy Scout, and I remember being exposed to Appalachian Trail, and I thought it was fascinating being in North Georgia and looking down this trail and, my scoutmaster saying, "This trail goes on for 2,000 more miles to Maine." That was a moment for me where I was like, "That seems like something I wanna do." And I think also I remember fast forward a few years later, my neighbor's daughter's boyfriend in high school had hiked that Appalachian Trail, and I heard, like, through the grapevine, that he was, like, hitchhiking and, like, met all these cool people. So that, like, built into the lore and the desire, and I think ultimately when I was looking at graduating or after graduating college, I was like, I just had this huge desire to go do exploration and go see a bunch of random places. I really just had this, like, huge desire to go see things and really get kind of out there. I remember just, like, I wanted to just be out there, whether that was in, like, the woods of the United States or, like, somewhere really remote in New Zealand or somewhere, at the time felt, like, completely obscure to me in Asia. Like, I just was dying to go do that.
Did you get a cool trail name?
Matrone was smooth. It's
Any
like,
reason?
oh, yeah, everybody has a reason. My reason was I started shaving my legs around the time I was bicycling in New Zealand, and when I came back to hike the AT, I still had some, like, glistening legs, and we were sitting around the fire one night, and my legs were glistening in the fire at night, and somebody's like, "Dude, what the hell is going on over there?" And I was like, "Shave my legs," and nobody out there was shaving their legs. It seems like now, not a lot of guys do it, but certainly some percentage of guys do it, and it's I got the name Smooth.
You know what's funny? Like, as you say that, I was sitting here thinking, it seems like now a lot of guys shave it and a lot of women don't. Like,
Yep, we're
specifically
just
with
going like this.
yeah, with, like, the thru hiker community, so that's funny. You kinda highlighted this a little bit, but and I guess this goes into the story about how Greenbelly got started, but, what were you most businesses start because somebody sees a problem and there's not a known solution for it, right? What specifically were you seeing other than foods that were just predominantly low calorie and you had to drink olive oil to make up your energy needs for such a physical endeavor? What were you dissatisfied with what you had tried on the market that made you decide to go make this one-stop shop?
Yeah, I think it was frankly, just in general, all low calorie bars. I was kind of shocked at how all the mass marketed differentiations were really just subtle variations. It was like, oh, look at this, like, blah, 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 blah. But it was at the end of the day, it felt like a 200 calorie snack bar. And I was just kind of like, it's even some of the fact that some of those bars are marketing themselves as meal replacements. I'm like, this is 300 calories. This is not a meal replacement. So I think that was really it. Just looking at, frankly, what I view as subpar bars.
And so you got off the trail, you came home, you start thinking up this concept. What like, walk through the iterations of what your first attempt was to what you guys have now.
Yeah, this was a decade ago, but the real I remember the first iteration was actually a goop, like a goo kind of like thing. Is in my mind, it was just calories. I'm just gonna make this thing that was, I think it was like peanut butter, oats, nuts kind of thing, and you would just kind of like, sip it down or goo it down, almost like cookie dough or something. And then I think when I was looking at that, I was like, "This is not practical. This is really kinda gross." But that was frankly iteration 1 of trying to solve the problem. And then iterations from there went more to the bar format, but that was a process, making a bar, uh, there are actually, like, some complicated things. You need to, like, worry about shelf life. You need to worry about how well it's going to stick together in cold and hot temperatures. It does start to get a little more complicated, and that's frankly when I started making recipes in my mom's kitchen. I realized I was in a little bit over my head. And this is before ChatGPT and all that for sure. And I think that would have been really helpful to have. But I used really the bulk of my savings to work with a food scientist. And we started coming up with some spreadsheet formulas, talking about it on the phone. I think he was in New York at the time, and we started shipping back samples. And I think when we started getting I was giving him feedback on how to update the product and what I thought could be improved and stuff. But I had a vision roughly of the macros I wanted, some rough kind of ingredient spectrum I was looking at, and he was able to execute that pretty reasonably well, maybe like 70%. And then I took that to um, sampling out to a lot of people, including trail days in Damascus, Virginia. I handed out like hundreds of samples to people and said, "What do you think of this? If you could change anything about this, what would you change?" And then did more iterations from there until we got a product that I felt good about. And then the next wave of that was blasting out samples to, at the time, it was more blogs. Those were like the influencers of the days of
Yeah.
like 2013, 2014, 2015. So I started sending out the blogs, frankly, genuinely just trying to get feedback. And then they would give me feedback, and there'd be little iterations from there.
So at that point, were you I guess a better question would be, at what point did you start to feel like I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm imagining that you began down this route just messing around, and then you started to feel like, "All right, this could potentially be a thing." What point did it start to transfer from, "Yeah, this would be kind of a cool idea or concept," to, "I might really wanna do something with this"?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think my idea of I wanted to do something. I don't think that I knew that it was going to be bars. I knew that I wanted when I came back from traveling for that year and a half or 2 years, I knew that I was not going to be going back to accounting. So I knew that I was gonna take a jab at some sort of business, but I don't think I fully understood what the product would be. So I think that decision was solidified. It was more about like, what's my vehicle to execute on this entrepreneur path. And I think that probably took time to solidify that the bars would be um, that vehicle.
What, when you think about working with one guy, making some samples to, you know, essentially mass producing these in in a manner that meets customer demand, I would imagine there's, like, exponential challenges that come with that. How did that look after you guys first started?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first round is I was well, I don't think I know the first rounds I was making in my mom's kitchen and selling them. And I think there was something called the cottage food laws, which they allow you to make, I wanna say it was, like, up to $50,000 in revenue from your own home kitchen. That's what allows, like, the people at your corner farmer's market to sell without stringent food licenses, is basically just haven't met a revenue threshold. So, anyway, that was round 1 of production, and round 2 was going to a small co-packer, and they were pretty good. They were already making granola at the time, and they helped, make the small batches that we were looking for. It was totally fine, and frankly, we're still with them. They just changed facilities a few times. So I think the biggest problems, though, were, I think, really letting go of me making them and having somebody else make them, which sounds strange, but I just wanted to make sure that they're actually gonna be made properly.
That is, but that's a good, like a good question that has always intrigued me is, if you have this macro profile that you're trying to hit, like that's pretty easy to do if you make one pan, right? It just like put all the ingredients together, essentially, put them in a pan, divide them evenly, and that's your macros, that's your nutrients. Is it the same idea when you're making, I mean, how many units do you guys sell a month or a year?
Honestly, I'm probably not comfortable sharing with the class our units, but I'll say we still make these in small batches. Like, they're still making them. rolling them out by hand in batches. And I don't know. I mean, I've been to actually like thought about, I actually bought a machine a while ago. We've talked about machining, and it's complicated doing a machine. I think it introduces some complexities and trade-offs, and ultimately keep coming back to hand making them.
Yeah,
So
I
anyway,
think
we haven't compromised too much, frankly, on like what you're talking about. But I think if we were making a huge batch, like for sure, if we started introducing something like salt, right? Like salt can be really powerful if you over pour, under pour, or if it's not evenly distributed. So if you have a huge batch of, like, we make these like big batches of like dough essentially, right? And then roll them out. So if we had too big of a batch of dough and we're dumping salt in there and that salt's not evenly distributed, like that could be a problem.
yeah. No, I think that's a great point, both in taste and macros, because if all the salt settles to the bottom of a bowl, let's call it, right? Now you've got 5,000 milligrams in one batch and relatively none in another. And, not only will that obviously affect the macro composition for people who are relying on their sodium intake from these bars, but it'll obviously affect the taste too. One of the things that I think is like most really, really unique and was really, really intriguing to me about your bars when I first knew about them a long time ago. I mean, I've known obviously about the meal to goes for a long time, is your what sounds like intentional approach to make sure that the nutrient composition of these bars fulfilled a certain percentage of a person's daily needs among a certain number of nutrients. And the nutrients are, go ahead, remind me because I don't want to mess this up.
Yeah, no, we try to nail all the macros, so it was, yeah, your calories, protein, fats, fibers, sodium, carbs. Like we tried to get 33% of your daily value. It's funny you bring that up. We've actually kind of, I wouldn't say pivoted away from that, but I think our claims around that have softened heavily because, well, for a variety of reasons, but the nutritional recommendations vary, they change, they fluctuate, right? So it's like, this is not wise to be saying this is one third of your daily intake. It just doesn't feel quite right. It feels a little too bold. I feel like we kind of need to soften that and really just kind of come back to something that's saying this is going to give you a lot of macros. Like we're going to do our best to make sure you got a lot of calories, you got some protein, you got some carbs, you got some fat, you got some fibers, and you got some sodium, right? We're going to give you sufficient amounts of each of those, and that's really what I kind of pulled back to.
Yeah, that's great. You have a relatively new, at least I think it's new, product that's built around protein. Can you talk a little bit about that one and how it varies from your current meal to go?
Yeah, our current meal to go is frankly high carb, what I might say is medium protein, and this is completely inverse. So high protein, low carb, low sugar, relatively speaking. So, and I might be getting my numbers up mixed roughly because I know I'm literally making a new version of that protein one as we speak. But we're trying to be around 40 grams of protein a meal and 10 grams of sugar. And our current lineup of the meal to goes, the high carb ones are like 35-ish grams of sugar and 17-ish grams of protein. So we're really having a high carb line and a high protein line.
Was that mostly out of consumer demand, or was that something you just felt like was a gap in the market or a personal, driver for you, something you wanted and just created and thought other people probably want this too?
I think all of the above. Obviously, there's been a huge consumer shift to protein. I don't want to be too reactionary because there's so many shifts in consumer behavior. Like when we started in this, it was like gluten free was the hot thing. Keto was hot for a minute. Now high protein's hot. It's like I don't want to be reactionary. I really want to kind of have some like core principles, which is basically like give people a lot of nutrition for people that are really pushing things. And I think that that's a pretty good principle to stand by. And so I think it's also kind of like what I was saying is like high carb versus high protein. And I think personally, I've shifted more towards higher carb and lower protein, or excuse me, higher protein and lower carb in my daily life. So it's kind of another dimension of that. But I think there's a little bit of preference too. Like some people just are going to want some people are going high carbs, some people are going high protein, depending on what they're pushing or what they want.
Yeah, no, it's all good points. I'm excited to see what the new version is.
Maybe we can send you some when we get it finalized. I'm trying to make it a little gooier right now. They're a little dry, but we'll see.
Um, the the other thing that I found fascinating about you guys, right? Is so for anyone who's not familiar, we sort of got connected through an electrolyte video that we did. I'm not sure when that's supposed to be out, but
I filmed it today.
oh, you did.
Yeah,
Oh, well, you'll have to let me know when it's out. We can link it in here, and people can
for
watch
sure,
it if they
man.
want to.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
in an effort, like I knew about the meal to goes, but that whole invitation, which I was honored to do, made me go dig up more of like, what about the company? I don't know anything about the actual company itself. You guys have a really great and uncommon resource housed in your website and in all your social media platforms. And the resource is just a ton of helpful information, articles, and really, really well done videos on your YouTube channel about nothing highlighting your bar. Right. I mean, it is no sales pitch about buy this, buy us, or anything like that at all. It's just really good and helpful information. What what was that intentional, or are you just writing out a pure love, hobby, and joy about things that you like?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Really do. Um, I, there's, trying to answer that is in general, like how are we transitioning to more YouTube stuff and why? There are a lot of answers to that question, and I'm like knee deep in that right now, right? I really am like been going more and more down the YouTube rabbit hole. But in general, like content and written content, and I think you referenced written and video. The written content we did was, it started off honestly as something that I don't know if I would say it was like a journal. That's not fair, but it was more like things that I had experienced through hiking, things like that. And it's just so happened that I started to notice that, excuse me, I was writing them on Greenbelly's website. And it just so happened I started to notice that we were getting website traffic from those first posts. And then I started to kind of segue, oh, this is like clearly a marketing opportunity and something to really optimize for Google search engines. And that's frankly how we really, really grew Greenbelly is we got a lot of website traffic from that kind of content. And like, we did our best to make it good. And that was like one pillar of content is doing the written. And then I've really been transitioning more to YouTube lately, for obvious reasons. I think video is easier to connect with. More people, I think, are watching videos and they're reading blogs. And I think there's a lot more opportunity with video than there is written content. And that seems to even be more and more validated as AI seems to be creeping into things. I think there's going to be more human connection with video, especially with like a founder or a specific kind of creator. But that's really where I still feel like I'm kind of like a teenager right now with YouTube and the video kind of thing. I don't think we've quite found our lane. And you're talking about like not talking about product. Like I want to be talking about product in some capacity, but I'm not really sure the tone. So even the video we were filming today, like I put a little blurb about Greenbelly in there. We've put some blurbs about Greenbelly in some, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just talk about things and but I think that's going to be kind of TBD how that pans out.
Well, what you don't do, and what I think is annoying to people is you don't have throughout the entirety of a video specific product placement about your bars, whether intentional or not.
Mm.
And like the company that I think about all of the time with this and that does such a good job is Red Bull. If you watch anything that has anything to do with Red Bull, maybe someone's drinking one at the end, but for the most part, it's people doing crazy, extreme, insane things, and they have a helmet on that happens to have the logo. But aside from those two things, them drinking a can at the end of the video, and aside from the helmet, they never really say anything about Red Bull. Yet everyone and their mom goes and associates that with, adventure, fun, and extreme sports. So I think that you've done it well, and I'm gonna be sure to link the YouTube in our show notes because, like, there's 3 videos that come to mind 4 videos that come to mind on there that I thought were great. One of them is, like, an overview of what hiking does to your body. One of them was a documentary on, I think it was the AT, called Grit, something Grit,
Native grit.
made of grit. One of the well, I'm gonna link 5 because one of them is gonna be our electrolyte video. One of them was about what hiker food does to your body, and
Yep.
then, another one on there was, and this one's pretty recent, like, I can't remember the exact title, but you interviewed several people who had done the AT, and they talked about their 5 favorite pieces of gear, which everybody who does anything outside loves gear. But they were good, they're great, they're well done, and I just thought that that was really interesting, and I guess it kind of reminds me, even as you described your early sort of onset with all of this, whenever you left the accounting and went on this adventure, you did all these miles and you did the adventure, but you also spent time somewhere teaching English in a school, right? I mean, you weren't it's just a really selfless way to do things. I think it's awesome, so be happy to, link it so people can check it out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I know it's nice hearing even thoughts and feedback on the videos because a lot of times I'm just talking with a couple people and coming up with concept and seeing if it sticks, you know?
Yeah, we've done awesome with it. Um, this might be a hard question to answer, but if you had one giant wish list of where Greenbelly would be 5 to 10 years from now, what would it look like? Or what would be on it?
Mm. I'm gonna think about that one. Interesting. I think for now, well, it's already referenced, but I'm so deep into the YouTube world right now. It's hard for me to think much outside of that, but I would love to be, um, I just want to make good videos. I think that's like a big one for me. And I, the more I get into YouTube, the more I realize I don't know. So I think, and mastery is like a corny word, but I would say achieving some more higher level of YouTube, I think would definitely be something in the roadmap. I also think I want to make our products great. I know it sounds corny and cliche, but the products I still think could be better. And I'm like working on that right now. So I'd say in the next 5 years, I really just want a better product. I want that to be whether it's cleaner ingredients, better macros, or more consistency. There's so many little things that I just want to make our product better. So I don't know if you're looking for like bigger, grandiose business stuff. I don't know if I have it. I think it would be make a better product and make better videos.
I don't. In fact, I was going to caveat the question by saying it may be nothing, right? I think especially in the culture we live in, the idea is that as a founder, as a business owner, or just as a general person, you always want more, you want better, you want growth, you want all of this, and it's like maybe not. Maybe you love where it's at. You love the size that it's at, and you love the heart behind it, and you recognize that more could potentially hurt all of that. I mean, a great example of that is the fact that you're hand forming the bars. It's like, yes, you could mass produce them, but would the quality go down, and is that worth it? No, not even at more money. And I think that's great, and one of the, personally, even in the experience that we've had within our own business, this concept of constantly chasing more growth, I think, is a big, massive black hole, and I mean, a kind of a lie. Sometimes,
Yeah. I
smaller
mean, it's
is
difficult. I
better.
mean, I think it's difficult to find your balance, right? If balancing ambition and complacency, I think, is a difficult balance that I think all of us struggle with. And for the record, I'm not just going to sit here and say like I'm wanting complacency. I do, yeah. I definitely want more, and I want, yeah, for sure, 100%. But yeah, I think it's a difficult balance.
Yep. All right, a couple fun things, and then we'll let you go. You can think about it in the context of your time in your adventures or whatever, or you can think about it even since because you still, enjoy doing stuff outside. What was the most unexpectedly good trail food or meal that you had?
Interesting. Are you wanting thoughts on what I think is a good trail meal in general now that might be underrated, or like a moment maybe on I don't know, maybe a through hike that I had like a surprise meal that was just amazing.
Well, let's go both.
I think underrated trail food two come to mind. Pork rinds. Big pork rind guy. I don't know if it's just because I'm from Georgia. I feel like they may be a little higher per capita consumption of pork rinds in the Southeast, maybe? I don't know. But, love pork rinds. They're crunchy, they've got protein. I think there's so little crunch out on the trail that I appreciate. If you bring, like, a bag of chips for, like, a 7-day hike, the chances of that bag of chips surviving is very low, but pork rinds there's something about them that just holds the crisp. And the other thing I would say is seaweed. Well, I think a big pillar that most outdoor food gets wrong, or maybe most consumers do on the trail, is quality. I don't think most people get like a good balance of healthy food on the trail. And I think that's for obvious reasons that, healthy food just is not portable or shelf stable. I mean, I get it, but I think love seaweed. Seaweed's a veggie that you can get on the trail, shelf stable. I think it tastes good, salty. I think seaweed is very underrated for a trail food. I think it's a way to get your greens. So pork rinds and seaweed. And then I'm going for like an epic meal, something that just like lit me up. I don't know if I could think of one. I think there would be so many times just going into trail towns, and I had kind of a go-to trail town meal, which was I'd get a frozen pizza. I'd eat the whole frozen pizza. I'd get a pint of Ben& Jerry's ice cream. I ate the whole pint. I'd get a bag of salad. I ate the whole bag of salad. I get an orange, eat the orange, and I might have had like a burger or something else, but I would just go. I mean, I would just eat a mountain of junk food, you know. So I wouldn't do that probably now, but at the time, I was like, oh, just give me anything that's yeah,
Palatable, full of
calorically
calorie. Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, calories. So, but I remember like I have a journal from the AT, and I was reading it the other day, and I was talking about that. I was like, oh, like I can't wait to get back in town, and I was like they're describing me salivating for food. So like that was a very real experience.
All right. Worst gear purchase of all time and best gear purchase of all time.
I realize I'm not rapid firing this, Kyle. I'm sorry.
No, they're great.
Um, all
We like
right,
depth.
all right, worst gear purchase. Oh baby, I'm gonna throw someone under the bus here.
You don't,
Um,
I mean, you can name brands if you want to, but you don't have to.
Oh, I don't wanna name this brand because they were really nice to me. Oh, well, I can't name that brand, but
Specific category, general idea.
there's a backpack there's a brand that I'm not in love with, but I don't know if I wanna say names. I need to give you something more concrete than that, though. Oh, I know what I'll say. This is a fair one because this is actually pretty legit, is, I started hiking in these, like you might call them, like, mountaineering, or they call them, it's like ascent shoes. When you start if you go rock climbing, it's like this. There's rock climbing shoe, and then there's, like, an ascent shoe. I was hiking the AT in an ascent shoe, and trail runners have dominated hiking and trail running and all that kinda stuff now, but, when I was hiking the AT, like, trail runners were, kind of around, but not like they are now, so I would say least favorite gear is always old footwear. I just never seemed to work. Always foot pains, discomfort, wet, didn't dry well. I just hated that stuff. So I think that's been a big change is like switching to trail runners. And I love trail runners. And then club gear, I guess I could say trail runners, but I would say honestly I think the squeeze water filters. Sawyer's the big one. Platypus has come out with one, but those things are so cool. They're like everybody has them now on the trail, but in my like those are a huge invention in my mind. You went from those have enabled us to take water from anywhere outside and consume it. Like what a cool concept. And they're basically $20 and they can screw onto your water bottle. Like I think they're just I love them.
Well, they're so much smaller. You don't have to sit there over a hole and pump and do all of this stuff. And yeah, and they're, for the most part, they get clogged and eventually, and you can, or you can sit there and try to filter them, and they're great. All right. One piece of advice you would give for someone who's considering a through hike.
Need to go a little philosophical, but the first thing that comes to mind is I think I would know why you're doing it. This would probably go for anything difficult in life, whether you're training for a marathon, you're starting a business, you're going to medical school. I don't know. Like, just think about why you're doing it. Because when I look back at the people that I think quit and people that still quit, I feel like a lot of times they didn't go into it quite gung ho. I feel like the people that I knew went into it gung ho, finished, and they really had a reason. Like, I really want to do this for whatever. I'm just dying to do it for a gut. Like, I want to do it for the challenge. I want to do it to explore the woods. I want to do it because I want to experience more of a social life and meet new, maybe unconventional types of people. But I think really having a why before you go out there is really important. I don't think it's good to just. I remember I had a friend that pursued the ADT, and she was talking about, she's like, "Oh yeah, like, I got my gear like a week before going, and then I went out. Me and she and her friend went. She's like, yeah, and then we ended up quitting like 2 weeks in because it was just hard, and we really didn't know what we were getting into. And I'm like, it's like really got to know why you're going out there, plan for it, think about it, understand things are gonna suck, and it's also gonna have awesome times, but things are gonna really suck out there, and it's gonna be rainy for 4 days at a time, and your gear is gonna be soaked, and there's gonna be a cold front that comes through, and you're gonna shiver the night away, and like there's just gonna be, or there are gonna be times where you're lonely and you don't like who you're hiking with, or you don't hike with anybody. So I think understanding why you're out there, why you really want to do it, is gonna help you,
Mm.
go the distance.
That's great. You watch documentaries, you read about people doing it, and you don't think about those things, right? You think about just all the camaraderie and getting your trail name and eating pizzas and pints of ice cream. But yeah, there's a lot of potential loneliness out there too, and getting wet and
But,
cold and
I was thinking
whatnot.
about, like, anytime you do anything for 6 months, like, you think about the last 6 months of your life, right? Or for me, the last 6 months of my life has had peaks and valleys, right? And I think solo through hike, you're going to go out there and there are gonna be peaks and valleys, no pun intended, but they're like, you need to be prepared for the shitty moments out there, you know? So,
That's good advice. Podcast or book recommendations? Audio.
these aren't related to outdoors at all.
That's good.
Okay. I was there's if there's one YouTube channel that I watched almost every episode of, it's Punk Rock MBA. He stopped doing YouTube like maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, but I'm a huge punk rock fan. I watched every one of his videos, so recommend that. I still watch now for there's a hardcore YouTube channel called Hard Lore. I've been listening to Hard Lore more lately. Shout out to Hard Lore. And I like Rick Beato. Rick Beato's got some good um, maybe more deeper music industry insights that I listen to a lot. So those are more YouTube channels, but I'm counting them as podcasts because I think all of those kind of have some podcast variations.
Favorite punk rock band?
I'm gonna go with Hot Water Music. I love them. I don't know if anybody's listening knows who they are. They're not that huge of a band, but I think very near and dear to my heart. I love their lyrics.
Last but not least, if people wanted to get in touch with you, check out Greenbelly, anything like that, where is the best place to find you?
You just email me. It's chris@greenbellybar.com. CHRIS at greenbellybar.com. Um, we have greenbelly.com. That's our domain. It's actually currently greenbelly.co. We're gonna change that domain soon, but yeah.
Okay. I will link all that in there. I appreciate you taking time to sit down and chat with me. I know you're busy. I'm excited to see our electrolyte video, and we'll have everything in the podcast notes.
Cool, man. Thanks.
So huge thanks to Chris because he's in the middle of quite a few things with his own business, but managed to carve out some time for us to jump on and answer some questions. And like we talked about in the podcast itself, I'll link some of their content in the show notes because again, it's just helpful, and it's not a social media channel that just is constantly plugging their brand. Some of it has absolutely nothing to do with their brand, but just really good information, really well done, really well edited, really well just put together content pertaining to the outdoors. So yeah, we love stuff like that and want you guys to find it too. So that will be in the show notes. Thank you for joining us, spending time with us, choosing to listen to us. A lot of you have ranked our show or commented on it. You've shared it with people, and that means the world to us. And so, like we always say, if you hear an episode that you think would be really helpful to a friend of yours, just throw it over to them and say, hey, thought of you whenever you listen to this. Would love to hear what you think. And we, of course, really appreciate that too. We will be back again in another couple of weeks with more new episodes. We've got great stuff planned for 2026, but hopefully we'll be able to get a couple of these out before the end of the year as well. Have a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.